Good evening, still maybe not evening, good afternoon everybody. Today this is my second, in fact, panel. I'm the moderator, I will moderate. So welcome to the panel of the special evening session, and the topic of this panel is tapping the potential of centers of excellence. That is in fact something for some of you really new. For some of you, especially for us, it is our almost daily job. The main goal of this panel is to introduce the Center of Excellence, introduce the idea of Center of Excellence, and to show you how supportive are Center of Excellence for NATO, for the Alliance, and for nations. Let me start from some numbers. In fact, we have 26 Center of Excellence, 25 within the NATO and 1 in the European Union. And today we have 4 Center of Excellence from NATO and 1 from European Union. Those Center of Excellence deliver expertise within 26 spheres of NATO and EU activity, because the main principle of Center of Excellence is that they cannot duplicate those assets that already exist in NATO and EU. It means that if we have the Center of Excellence dealing with human, for example, there is no option to have the second Center of Excellence dealing with the same area. It is really important because in fact, it means that those 25 NATO Center of Excellence and 1 European Union covers 26 different areas of NATO and European Union spheres of activity. In fact, when it comes to numbers, all the Center of Excellence, it is more than 900 experts. 900 experts work for this 26 more than 100 experts work for this 26 Center of Excellence. In fact, 900 experts is more than NATO, more than ACO headquarters in Mons, together with ACT headquarters in Norfolk. So in fact, this is really an impressive number. Center of Excellence are delivering unique support for NATO operations, unique support for NATO transformation. This is the regular inflow of new ideas. In fact, Center of Excellence support NATO and European Union in terms of improving interoperability, developing doctrine and standards, collecting lessons learned, and preparing new concepts and experimentation. This is how we can briefly describe Center of Excellence. But let's come to some basic issues. What is the Center of Excellence? In fact, the Center of Excellence, before I will jump to our discussion, let me say what is the Center of Excellence. In fact, this is multinationally established and sponsored entity. This is not a part of NATO command structure. For those who don't know what is the NATO command structure, in fact, we have ACO, that is Allied Command Operation, and ACT, that is Allied Command Transformation. This is a kind of wider framework. Center of Excellence are working for NATO, but they are not itself part of NATO command structure. All Center of Excellence are to some extent similar. They are based on 4 pillars. This is education, training, doctrine development and standardization, analysis and lessons learned, and concept development and experimentation. Of course, each Center of Excellence is active in, as I said, in different area of NATO or European Union activity. What is good for NATO is that Center of Excellence are working for free for NATO. It means that everything is paid by nations. So that is one of the I would say biggest value of Center of Excellence. They are working for free, but not for nations, for NATO. To lead this discussion today, we have 5 fantastic discutants, my colleagues, directors of Center of Excellence. And gentlemen, good morning, good evening, in fact, and welcome to the stage. At the beginning, I would like to start up with one general question. Namely, as I said, Center of Excellence are to some extent similar, are based on the same pillars, but as I said, they are dealing with different different area of NATO and EU operations. Gentlemen, could you introduce your Center of Excellence? What is the mission of your Center of Excellence? Why your Center of Excellence are unique? And the final part of this question is the question I got 3 years ago from one of my US colleagues. He asked me, you are the director of the Center of Excellence, and where is this excellence in your Center of Excellence? So please, if I can ask Defense Against Terrorism Center of Excellence.
Thank you very much, and very much appreciate the opportunity to come out to the Cybersec and describe a little bit about what does the Center of Excellence Defense Against Terrorism actually do. And kind of like was mentioned, right now we're comprised of 8 nations, and we'll soon be 10 in the next couple of months that fund us and provide us our program of work. And before we really go into what do we do, it's probably useful to very briefly describe what is NATO's policy in terms of counterterrorism. And if you really look at it, they're based on 3 principles, which is first, support of international law, making sure that we support our allies, and just like we talked about COEs, we're non-duplicative and we're complementary to all the other international efforts out there. And primarily we look in 3 key areas, which is awareness of the threat of terrorism that comes to all of our nations, capability development for nations, not only for our NATO allies, but our partner nations, and very importantly, that we have engagement with partner nations as well as NGOs and other international agencies. And so what we do at COE-DAT is we support and contribute to NATO's counterterrorism efforts in the fight against terrorism. And we do that principally through 3 different ways. We're an education and training facility for NATO, based on NATO requirements as well as our partner nations. We're the department head for NATO in terms of all education and training for counterterrorism. And we're an independent center of excellence sitting outside of the NATO command structure that allows us to do independent research. And real quickly, I'll kind of break down those 3 areas. And so that first one, we provide that counterterrorism education and training to the alliance based on training requirements. But more really importantly is we're increasingly doing this to our partner nations. And this comes from SACEUR, the military committee, and the political committee realizing that the nations outside of NATO actually have a desperate need for counterterrorism education and training. And so we are seeing increasingly our support out to those areas in the South. We typically do 8 courses a year in residence, conferences, workshops, looking at different things. And very importantly, in 2019 so far, we have committed 4 mobile education and training teams in the Middle East and North Africa. And what we've seen in the last 2 years is we've gone from 17% of our students being from the Middle East and North Africa to over 50% this year. So what that means is we're getting after NATO's desire to assist our partner nations. We also work with 5 other COEs directly for our courses, so we're interoperable, and we're making sure that we're non-duplicative of our work out there. And as that department head, we have a very interesting role that because there are such a ever-expanding counterterrorism requirements out there, we're making sure that we're coordinating and not duplicating, making sure that the education and training out there meets our requirements as well as it's open to all of our allies and our partners. And finally, as a COE, we provide a think tank for NATO, an option for us to do research, to validate information, to look at that sustainable long-term transformation for NATO in terms of counterterrorism, trying to develop new concepts and policies. And we do that very closely with academia, non-government organizations, the UN, and other agencies like that. And of particular note, this year we had our first Women in Terrorism conference that was very well received by the UN and others, looking at an area that's not really being looked at in terms of counterterrorism. So with that, that's kind of a real quick primer. I don't want to take up a whole lot of time, but I'll pass the mic over.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm a little bit in a strange situation because normally I'm putting the question, not to answer, but I will try to do my best today. And as was mentioned, I'm Director, Counterintelligence Center of Excellence. I would say domestic center because we are resides in Krakow. I would say we are one of the youngest NATO center among the NATO family centers of excellence, and our path started 3 years ago, and 3.5, better said. The way was really smooth because most of counterintelligence services are directly under the direction of ministries of defense of partners nations. It means our influence and our, let's say, path is a little bit quick. Compared to NATO procedure, we were established within 2 years, and officially we started work in 2016. 2017, we were accredited as official NATO international multinational body. And from that period, we are working as independent body, as I mentioned. In our center are 11 nations. We have 2 framework nations, which is Poland and Slovakia, and other 9 nations, sponsoring nations, Czech Republic, Germany, Slovenia, Croatia, Lithuania, Romania, Hungary, Italy, and USA. As I mentioned, we are located at Krakow. However, we have possibility, a unique possibility to use military training area in Slovakia and Lešť, and we are using that for our training purposes. And we're using quite well that opportunity, and we take it as our advantage. What to say more about our mission? I would say in official declaration, in official policy within the NATO is written that CI domain is purely national responsibility. However, our nation decided to act together, to share information, to share experience, to prepare personnel to be able to cooperate. And that's our main mission on the field. Of course, our products are focused for that particular domains for preparation of the personnel on the international field. We are not preparing a person who is coming from the beginning. They have a certain level of knowledge. We are focusing to stick and prepare personnel, work together to understand each other, to set up the same standards based on NATO policy, because we are NATO Center of Excellence. And that's the most tangible products from our side. Of course, we are doing some researches. We try to follow a policy of transformation of NATO, and we are preparing some standards because without standards, it's impossible to work. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, my name is Josef Schröffel, Deputy Director Strategy and Defense from Hybrid COE in Helsinki, Finland. Like Robert said before, the special thing from my Center of Excellence are maybe 2 things. Yeah? The first is we are the only Center of Excellence funded from European Union and NATO. And we have in our task, we have 2 main tasks. The first is we must deal on the strategic level. And the second is we must be, or we should be, or we are a neutral facilitator between European Union and the NATO. We, as I said before, we are the youngest Center of Excellence, funded in 2017 by an idea from the European Union, but funded from 12 nations plus NATO and EU. Currently, we have 27 member states since last steering board. Our main activities are hybrid influencing, so what can be during elections. We have teams dealing with that matter all over Europe. The second is vulnerabilities and resilience, to strengthen that. And the third is where I come from, that's strategy and defense, so this is the military. There's also one difference between us and the other COEs. We are civilian-led. Our director is civilian. 2 of our main departments are civilian-led. Only my community of interest, my department is military. The secretariat of the Center of Excellence against Hybrid Threats is in Helsinki. We have 26 colleagues now working there. About the half are international. We are very slowly growing concerning our personnel because we say we want to have small growth. We want to have a small secretariat that we can be still flexible. Our main workers under brackets are practitioners, are experts, scientists, etc. This is our networks. They are out in our member countries. There are currently around 600 members in our network. That's the main. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Energy security.
Oh, thank you for invitation. It's worry-free guy. He used to be director of the Center of Excellence, for everybody to know. And organizers, thank you for inviting us here. Really great event. My thumbs are kind of aching from tweeting all the excellent quotes I've heard about the cybersecurity. But you got yourself a trouble. You invited energy guy here, and let me tell a little bit about energy security and how we deal with this at the center. We are Energy Security Center of Excellence based in Vilnius, Lithuania. Currently, I have 11 nations, soon to be 13, when the Poland and Ukraine both join us. And I've heard that some guys were talking about NATO policy on defense against terrorism. There is NATO policy about cyber. There is no NATO policy on energy security, believe it or not. So it makes my hands free. I can fly free, not totally free. Energy security as a kind of idea, as a business, has been with NATO since 2006. The center has been established in 2012, and we are operating since. So how NATO prefers to deal in energy security is in kind of 3 areas. First, the NATO has the ambition to inform and raise awareness among NATO and the partner nations about energy security. Second one, and this is why I'm here, NATO agrees that they have to advise NATO nations on protection of critical energy infrastructure, and that's big. Really big part of my portfolio at the center. And of course, third is NATO encourages military to be more energy efficient. Good luck, we're trying, it's hard, okay, for us. So that's the 3 areas, how we approach energy security. Another trick question for you. Do you know, and sorry, I can only see the first 3-5 rows, so you are my victims. I'm asking question to you. Can you guess how many people deal with energy security in NATO headquarters? Or in NATO, for that matter? Best guess. Shout. 3. Actually 3. I have at my center now 30 people, okay? So 10 times more. So NATO uses me as hell. Really, because we are NATO's tool in energy security. And you, Robert, asked, where is the excellence in our center? And today I've heard, maybe yesterday, that there was the expression coined up here, think and do centers of excellence. We are Think and Do Center of Excellence. Here, bringing you back to cyber, you've heard, how the governments and private companies have to partner more and do more together in order to legislate or solve the problems related to cyber. Everybody remembers the cyber attacks in Ukraine 2014, 2015, when half of the Ukraine went blank, in the electricity sector. What we did in the center, we grabbed our bags together, we deployed to Ukraine, and we organized the tabletop exercise together with Ukrainian on how to protect energy networks from cyber attacks. Very successful exercise. Ukrainians' recommendations for this exercise is being built in Ukraine legislation now on protection of critical energy infrastructure from different kind of attacks. Last year, what we did, almost all of you are civilians, few of military here. What civilians like, what we've learned is civilians like military approach to conducting and throwing together tabletop exercises. So what we did last year, we invited all the gas sector operators in the Baltic region, plus Poland and Finland, to Lithuania for the tabletop exercise. Scenario was cyber attack in gas networks. We structured, we developed the scenario, injects inputs, all the military guys, we know how to do exercise. Civilians liked it, Next year, we're doing the same for electrical sector in Baltic. So So think and do center. That's what we are. That's what we pride ourselves on. NATO is requesting products for us. We have done, everybody knows what is NATO Central European Pipeline System? This is like a system of where the liquid fuels are being distributed throughout Europe. Very good system, developed in the early 50s, in the Cold War time. It has one flaw, which is very important for this region. It ends in the middle of Germany. What the hell, sorry. It has to be extended because the problem that the NATO eastern flank expanded, this system has not expanded. But that's the minor flaw. There is another flaw, not the flaw, but what NATO asked us to do cybersecurity evaluation of the system. And we are not IT security. I don't deal with IT security and critical energy infrastructure. I deal with operational technology security, with where the hands get dirty, So that's what we do at the center as far as the cyber security and energy networks go. And then all the policies, all the practical implementations of military energy efficiency issues. But I have 30 people, so we can handle a lot of work. Thank you. Sorry for taking too much time.
Thank you. And Humint.
Okay, so good evening. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here these days. It is a great chance for me to have different contacts with civilian side. It's quite difficult to speak up after energy security director. He's full of energy. He's very vocal.
But try.
Humint is calm and quiet. We listen and collecting whatever we can. So our center is located in Romania, Oradea. The framework nation is Romania. Together with 8 other nations, we established the center back in 2009, but the officially opening ceremony was in 2010. We proved to be a very mature institution, and we were involved up to now in all the projects and everything that has been done in NATO in regards with Humint. For those that are not very aware about what Humint means, Humint is a subdiscipline of Intel discipline that is dealing with collecting information from person to person. So we say that we are unique, and it's not because I'm part of this family. It is because we do not use any technical tools in order to collect information. So we are the only one that can collect information about inside threats, motivations, and things like this, instead of other subdisciplines as SIGINT, TMINT, ELINT, whatever. They do use different technical devices to collect information about locations, persons, events, and other stuff. We also, our mission is to provide the highest quality services and products for NATO. In response of any requirements coming from the command structures, force structures, or any NATO nations. So far, you probably may know that Humint is quite classified domain, so unfortunately we are not open to non-NATO countries up to now. As any other center, we are structured in 4 pillars: education and training, doctrine and standards, lesson learned, and concept development and experimentation. Since we opened this center in 2010 in NATO, I would say that there are very few doctrines, policies, TTPs that were dealing with Humint. We took the responsibility in 2009, and we developed everything. We have now a doctrine, we have TTPs, we have some other policies that will help our partners to deal with this subdiscipline. If we are not custodianship for any publication, we definitely are heavily involved in writing everything that is in NATO at this moment. On the education and training, I would say that our primary word on this section is interoperability. So what we do here in the section is, yes, we train people, we educate people, but we do not train them from the basic. We look for interoperability. So there are countries with huge experience in human intelligence domain, but they are still sending people to the Human Center of Excellence for interoperability. Because so far, each nation has own national training center, but they are using their national policies. Now, in the center, we train interoperability. So then people in a different theater of operation, they can speak the same language, they can use the same tools, they can use the same publications and TTPs. On the lesson learned, we do collect passively and actively observations from exercises, from courses, but also from theater of operation, Kosovo, Afghanistan. And then we do analyze this, and further on, we try to implement lesson learned in future revision of documents and doctrines, but also improving the course curricula that we run in the center. And I just forgot to mention, we kindly have, for the moment, we have at least 2 types of courses: online courses, unclass, which are available for any NATO countries without any restrictions, and resident courses, which are totally classified. And the last but not the least, the concept development and experimentation section is dealing with building new concepts, and there will be time later on to talk about one of the latest concepts that we are working on, humanity cyber, but some other concepts, and later on we try to implement all these concepts in exercises, courses, and if all of them or some of them are feasible, will be incorporated in NATO doctrines and standards. So in few words, I know that the time is running. This is it about Human Center of Excellence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at the clock because I am the guardian of time here. So thank you very much. In fact, it is the perfect situation today because we have human, we have energy security, hybrid, counterintelligence, and counterterrorism. So in fact, almost it's a vital part of NATO operation, in fact, in terms of security. And I have my own theory in terms of uniqueness and excellence. Excellence, it is what Director of Energy Security said. We have Center of Excellence have much more experts than NATO. In fact, that is the excellence of Center of Excellence. And uniqueness is that, this is my own theory, that we don't have time to lose, because Center of Excellence usually are, I would say, even overloaded. We have a lot of work. Center of Excellence have a lot of work. They have a lot of projects in favor of NATO, in favor of nations. And in fact, my experience for the last 3 years was that really Center of Excellence is really busy all the time. However, let me jump to the discussion that is closer to cyber and hybrid. In fact, all your Center of Excellence are dealing with countering hybrid threats within your particular domain, in fact. So I would like to talk about hybrid activities in cyberspace, but not all kinds of hybrid activities. I would like to talk about hybrid activities that have capability to influence societies. I have an impression that this is really important right now, because we have social media, we have a lot of disinformation today. During the Hedging Against Hybrid Threat panel, we could have chance to hear Microsoft, to hear Facebook, and really good speakers in terms of how to counter, in fact, in hostile information operation. So I would even dare to say that cyberspace, it is a perfect environment to influence people's mind. That is my theory, but I think that it works, and I would like to see. I would like to hear your opinion about that. Let me address this question to Center of Excellence that is in charge of countering hybrid threats, because your perspective, I would say, is the broadest perspective of countering hybrid threats. What's your opinion about that? If it's true, or maybe it is completely out of any reality, cyberspace as an environment to conduct hybrid activities that in order to influence people's minds.
Thank you, Robert, for the question. Well, first, we should clarify, or we should speak about it, if we speak about cyber and hybrid threats. Yeah? What are cyber threats, or what is the cyberspace, or what is cyber power as it, yeah? For hybrid warfare, for hybrid crisis, within hybrid threats. Yeah. So, cyber threats are part of the hybrid threats. This is one fact. But cyber power is a little bit more. Yeah? Cyber power is also a domain recognized by NATO and European Union. Cyber power is an enabler for activities, can be used for weapons, computer as a weapon, the internet as a weapon, and it's a tool. So it's a lot. It's much more than the other domains, first of all. Yeah? Cyberpower is also the only human-made domain. The others are existing thousands of years. Cyberspace, internet, 30 years, 40 years. And it's made by human beings, by us. Principally, cyber attacks or information attacks are always part of a larger campaign. And they combine at least espionage, sabotage, and disinformation. Cyber power as it depends upon context, and the rapid growth of cyberspace is a big problem. The low price of entry, anonymity, and asymmetries in vulnerability means that also smaller actors or non-state actors like companies, trusts, NGOs, etc., have more capacity to exercise hard and soft power. Hard and soft power like Samuel Huntington, soft power like Joseph Nye. In cyberspace than in the other domains like land, sea, air, airspace. And what is also very interesting, the largest powers, military powers, of course the largest military powers who have also huge capacities in cyberspace. But also smaller actors have the chance to be a power in cyberspace, even non-state actors, like I said before. Disinformation campaigns is only part of a broader campaign, including, like I said before, espionage, at least sabotage, at least, and maybe also warfare. I think that's a good starter.
Thank you very much. In fact, your answer leads me to another question. In terms of intelligence operations in cyberspace, and I would like to address these questions to Counterintelligence Center of Excellence Director, because in fact, Counterintelligence Center of Excellence must look at intelligence operations, including those that are conducted in cyberspace. And my question is very simple. What is the future battlefield for intelligence operation? Is it still more traditional? I mean, sources that I would say more traditional, without jumping into details, of course, or maybe the intelligence operation in the future will be conducted in cyberspace because it is much safer for them. Maybe the balanced cost effect is better for intelligence operation, and also in cyberspace, intelligence operation, I mean state actors that are hostile for us have the main advantage, that is attribution. It is difficult to attribute who stays behind. So what is the future battlefield for intelligence operations? Cyberspace or more traditional?
Nice question. Um, we are living in age of digitalization, and people are addicted to information. Even here, if you can see among the audience, a lot of people are looking to the computers or mobile phones. I hope not because they are boring, but they're looking or searching for information. We are surrounded by information, and last decade, last years, even every month, it's growing and growing number of information. Sometimes it's really hard to evaluate or analyze that information, and it's really hard to say what is true, what is a fake news, for example, or what is a little bit change reality. And that's one possible aspect which can influence, let's say, people in their behaving, in their, let's say, decisions. However, I would say that we are very often facing that mainstream in media is releasing the information. However, nobody or majority of us is never searching for some proof or for some evidence if that information is true. Majority of us is satisfied with releasing information, that's it. And that's a little bit difference between media and between the CI or special services. Of course, media are very effective, very quick, however, not too much precise. And our role is a little bit calm down and verify all possible aspects, verify all possible or potential information and declare which are the most suitable or most which are the true, let's say. And that's the reason, or that could be one of the aspects, how to influence the majority of people, or people who are not interesting or who are not deeply involved to the problem. However, there is not official, let's say, proof or experiment that is it possible to change the mind, the people who are already deeply involved in some problem or deeply involved in some opinion. For example, if majority of NATO or NATO is believing that Russia is aggressor, try to change the mind of the people. I think it's nearly impossible, and you can do what you want, but it could be one of the way. On the other hand, I think that cyber espionage and, as you mentioned, electronic warfare will stay also at the same level because it's also potentially field for battle.
Thank you for this answer. And now I would like to say one definition, quote one definition of human. Human's primary role is to gather intelligence by means of interpersonal contacts. So Florin, how your domain that is mostly oriented of human intelligence or people in fact, is based on people, how you can exploit cyberspace for your purposes. You said that you have some project that is focused on cyberspace, on human in cyberspace, if I understood. What is your opinion about that?
Yes, first of all, there are two different aspects here. The strategic human and tactical human. So what we do in our center is a tactical human. So we can NATO human operators can perform missions only in support of NATO, only in NATO operations. So on the first aspect, NATO strategic human, cyber is very well has affected this domain, and national services are already dealing with avatars and using different tools on collecting information. On our side, NATO human operations, yes, we do have a study in our center. We started this study, Human in Cyber Operation, or Cyber in Human. We didn't define yet who is doing what. 1 year ago, we had 2 working drafts so far, and next year we'll finalize this concept. The first conclusion is that we cannot talk about cyber in general. We can talk about social media. So yes, social media is affecting human missions because we do use social media for planning purposes. We do not use social media for conducting because still we are keeping the traditional way of human missions, people meeting people and collecting information. But for planning purposes, yes, we can and we have to use social media. On the other hand, in social media there are a lot of information right now. We can use this information to prepare references and documents in support of building the relations or finding places for meetings. But considering the fact that there are so many fake news present in social media, we are a little bit concerned of that. So for this reason, we are looking to develop a course soon about information assessment from human perspective, in where we are looking to teach and train our operators how to make the difference between fake news and information that can be used for planning purposes. On the other aspect that it was mentioned here about changing the mind, we produced a couple of years ago. We predicted that this topic will come in our interest. Human aspects of operational environment, in which we presented to the people how we should better understand the culture, the religion, the country before we go there for a mission. So this is just one of the example. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question I would like to address to energy security. Europe makes efforts to reduce vulnerability in terms of an energy security, but still gas, oil, and other resources are treated as a kind of, I would say, tool to make some influence. So that is clear. Russia initiatives like Nord Stream 2, for example, this is something that for some countries is really contested, for some others is supported. But in fact, we know that cyberspace can also influence this energy security. You said that energy security, in fact, what you are doing is it is mostly protecting, working how to protect critical infrastructure. So do you think that cyberspace will significantly influence or has significantly influenced your domain? And if so, how influenced your domain? Because it means energy security is, for those who has nothing to do with energy security, is just the security of energy. Security in terms of security of countries in terms of energy. But I think that is much deeper. Could you say a word about that?
Yes, definitely. Thank you for the question. Great question. I can talk about energy security all day long. And, since we are here, in the middle of Europe, everybody heard about Nord Stream 2, right? The Russian gas coming to Europe in quantities hardly imaginable, And remember what happened, Do you recall the debate? Russians decided we need Nord Stream 2, They invited a couple of Western companies to build it together, And the hearts of the many Western countries melted, There were declarations. This project is nothing but business as usual. Just making money. More gas to Europe is good, It's not dependency and everything, So this public, other nations were saying, come on, don't you remember the examples, that we were getting cold in Bulgaria, or even maybe, no, in Poland, you were good, But in Bulgaria, some other countries were getting cold because Russians were turning the gas, because of political reasons. So it's definitely policy related question. And where the debate was happening? Debate was happening in social media. That's what is in the cyberspace. Social media is in cyberspace. Even the paper media now is in the cyberspace. Are we ready to deal with this debate? This time, European Union was ready to recover. We have adjusted European directive, so the Russians cannot sell gas to Europe without any problems. But the problem is not over. Russians will use the media, cyber media, to continue the same escalation of the gas issue in Ukraine. You will see it. You will see it. Just before coming here, I have a good example. We're in Poland. You know what? The Poland, for those who are not from here, they are building Baltic pipe. What the Baltic pipe has in common with the Nord Stream 2? Anybody knows? Besides that, they are bringing gas, different gas. They are coming or somehow crossing the Denmark's territory, okay, or international waters. So Denmark was the last bastion to resist the Nord Stream 2 going through the waters. Russians had to do some legal mumbo jumbo to get avoidance, and just yesterday in social media was announced that, Poland applied to Denmark for permission to build Baltic pipe, and Denmark issued permission right away. No problems. Apparently today they in Skye win. They issued the permission to Russians anyway. But that's where the battles will happen. In cyberspace is where the publicity is, where the people can be reached, where minds can be. And one more issue, and this is very recent and very important, and very related to Polska Grupa Zbrojeniowa that I saw here today. Everybody remember the attacks in Saudi Arabia just a month ago. Do you know what those kinetic attacks have in common with cyber attacks? Nobody. Okay. They are non-attributable. We cannot officially yet attribute who executed the attacks. They are executed very cheaply. They were planned very smartly, and we don't know how to respond to it. Except today I saw the device developed by Polska Grupa Zbrojeniowa that kills the drones, So that might be influenced. So cyberspace is full of information. Bad guys as well as the good guys are using learning from it, and we will be using and we will be living in the cyber environment for a very long time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we have counterterrorism. Counterterrorism. In fact, I would like. Your mission is to deliver comprehensive understanding to terrorism and counter-terrorism challenges. This is from your webpage, in fact. And my question is a bit tricky to you. Let's think like a terrorist. I don't recommend to the audience, but I think that for the purposes of this panel, let's think like a terrorist. Do you think that from the terrorist perspective, do you think that some of the terrorist activities in the future will be shifted from the real life into cyber? Because in cyberspace, we can also influence some critical infrastructure. We can influence people, but in terms of cost effect, from the perspective of cost effect, maybe it is cheaper and less dangerous for terrorists to shift the center of gravity from real world to the cyberspace, because in fact at the end of the day this is the huge environment of influence. What do you think about that?
So I'll start off with a philosophical question of terrorism, or just a philosophical question. If a suicide bomber goes off and it's not reported in the media, did it happen? Terrorism is inherently a propaganda by the deed. The cyberspace is an enabler for them, is very clear on that, and they're using cyberspace in many ways to recruit, to gain money through criminal activities, to get their information out there. But terrorism really requires that human contact, that actual detonation of violence, because if you look at terrorism, it's all about the fear. And if we look at modern terrorism, if we start off from the last 200 years, it really began to take off with the modern social media. That first started off with the modern printing presses, through television, to now we have the internet. So it's a symbiotic relationship between social media, the media, what we see now as a cyber environment. They need each other. You know, the news media needs terrorism because terrorism provides a story. The terrorists need the news media because it provides a vehicle to get their message, their brand out there. Today, they are using that cyberspace very much in terms of those activities of recruiting, getting propaganda out there, quickly getting out to a mass audience they never could do before. But when we specifically talk about cyber terrorism, I guess maybe I'll offer a little bit of hope. We heard a lot about in the last 2 days the dangers in cyberspace of going after our critical infrastructure, infrastructure, doing damage and hurting people. But what I would say to you is that terrorists today, even if you talk about Daesh, it was always very aspirational, their ability within cyberspace. And in fact, I think many people would argue that it wasn't actually Daesh running the cyber caliphate, it was a nation state doing it. So we look at that, they really have a lot of aspiration, but very little capability of doing damage, to do physical damage to people. Now what they have done is they get their propaganda out there. We have seen them using cyber criminal activities to steal money to fund actual kinetic activity in which they kill people. We have seen them do things that are very much open source intelligence. We heard about a brief about that earlier today. They're going out looking at people's social media, they're identifying members of the military and government, and they've put out kill lists. So they are using cyber as a form of fear, but we've not seen them really being able to do anything in terms of kinetic hurting other people. We did see very interesting things from Daesh, especially after the Manchester arena bombing, in which they impersonated members of the UK, presenting themselves as hard right-wing to attack the Muslim community within the UK, which, again, what they were doing is trying to divide the society. So what I would offer to you is terrorists today have very aspirational desire for doing damage out there, but they have very little ability to do so. The things that keep me up awake at night is not a terrorist becoming a computer cyber person. My fear is the radicalization of a cyber person becoming radicalized to an ideology. That's what keeps me up at night, is worrying about that radicalization of people. Because ultimately, cyber terrorism, like all terrorism, is essentially rooted in a grievance and a narrative that's being put out there. And I would say where we're not doing that well as our Western societies are no longer providing the narrative of our nations and what we believe in, that is a much greater draw to people. And so terrorists are able to use that cyberspace to create a narrative for young people that are searching for something bigger than themselves, but they have to have some event. They have to have that media impact for them to draw people in. So I would give more of a hopeful tone at the end that cyber terrorism isn't real in terms of today being able to kinetically hurt people. That's actually state actors have that potential, but our terrorists don't.
Thank you very much. I will sleep. I will sleep well right now. Gentlemen, we have a little bit more than 4 minutes left, so it is time to wrap up. So my last question is: are your Center of Excellence ready to face challenges coming from cyber threats, from cyberspace, in fact? And how do you see the future of Center of Excellence? And now I would like to ask one by one. Let's start from you again.
So I would say Defense Against Terrorism is very much looking in the cyber environment. We do 4 of our courses are directly involved in looking at cyber, the media, social aspects, critical infrastructure protection. We see it's the means in which people communicate today. And because of that, we know we have to be out there. And I think for us going into the future, our recommendations to governments and to militaries is we have to get out there with our narrative. We can't always wait for the perfect 100% solution, because if we do that, they will always get out there first. You know, the thing that we try to tell people, and it's kind of like the Microsoft mentality, is get an 80% solution out there and people will buy your product. So our view is get out there early and tell your message. Get your narrative out there. Tell people what's happening. Be as open as you possibly can and tell them that, you know, the information's going to change, but continue to update. And if we do that in a cyberspace, we get out ahead of them, we'll be able to get in front of the terrorists and their demands and in front of their narrative.
Thank you very much.
our center tried to react on the domain of cyber, but it's not our pure domain. But I would say from CI perspective, very interesting who is behind the attack, not what's the reason of the attack or what's the technicalities, because there are other experts. However, during our education process and during our, let's say, products, we are thinking on that aspect. We also included that cyber aspects to our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is one chapter regarding that potential threats. To think about this, that is one of the possible source which can help us to understand reason of attacks and based on the attacks. And where is our future? I think our future is quite clear. We need to cooperate. It was mentioned here maybe several times. Cooperation, preparation, and training. And cooperation not only about among the nations within our domain, but maybe I'm deeply persuaded among our centers also.
Thank you very much, Joseph. EU perspective.
I can only speak for Hybrid Center of Excellence, of course, yeah. But we would not have 27 member states in 1.5 years if the member states would not like to have answers on questions. So I think the future of Center of Excellences, and it doesn't matter if they are from EU, NATO, or from both, is cooperation between, provide answers for decision makers, and provide answers for decision makers that they understand what we are speaking about, yeah, and to care about our network, because the network of practitioner, scientists, military, civilian, etc., is something special what we have. I would have also one recommendation for the future concerning cyber threats and hybrid threats. In the last 10 years, 12 years, the most of European states, or nearly all of them, made huge efforts to provide, to create crisis mechanisms within the state against cyber threats, cyber crisis mechanisms. It has also been supported by European Union and by NATO. And my question would be if these existing and maybe often also successful crisis mechanisms could also be used against hybrid threats. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Romualdas?
We are only destined to succeed, okay, but not alone. We've heard today that 97% of cyber infrastructure belongs in the private sector. It's the same, almost the same as when it is with the energy infrastructure. So there is no way for us to do it alone. We have to cooperate, and successful public-private partnerships is the key. So for those from private industries here who wants to work in the energy sector with our Center of Excellence, please come in. From those governments who want to join from different institutions at Ministries of Defense, come in. We welcome everybody. Only jointly we can succeed, okay? Sharing information, developing common practice, techniques and procedures, that's the only way to go. And again, we're destined to succeed, okay?
That is the voice of energy security. Please, Florin.
Yes.
Last but not least.
Yeah, I've already described a couple of initiatives that our center already started a year ago. Towards cyber. But our concern is not only the cyber domain, it is also the disruptive technologies and artificial intelligence too. So yes, we have to adapt, we have to be flexible, and we are looking forward to change whatever is needed in the doctrines, but also in the courses to train people to avoid mistakes which can affect our troops. So definitely cyber is in one of our project, and hopefully next year we'll finish this with a great success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and your answer ran this panel to the end. So thank you very much for coming. We are out of time, unfortunately. So thank you very much for your good explanation of your domain, good explanation of how Center of Excellence are working. And I think that after this panel, our audience we'll have better understanding how Center of Excellence are working and how huge support they are delivering to decision makers, to NATO, and to the European Union. Thank you very much.